DeLorme, when GPS mapping was CD-ROMs and books. Long before you could ask Siri for directions or tap your destination on Google Maps, there was a company that dominated the world of digital mapping, with an almost religious devotion to detail and accuracy. DeLorme, founded in 1976 in Yarmouth, Maine, was the undisputed king of consumer mapping software, selling millions of CD-ROMs packed with topographic data that made Rand McNally atlases look like cave paintings. For 3 decades, if you wanted to navigate anywhere in America with digital precision, you loaded up DeLorme's Street Atlas USA on your computer, printed out your route, and hit the road with paper directions that somehow felt more reliable than anything that would come later. The company's founder, David DeLorme, was a cartographer's cartographer, obsessed with creating the most detailed, accurate maps possible, even if it meant hand-checking every single road in America. But this obsession with perfection, this refusal to compromise on quality for convenience, would eventually become DeLorme's tragic flaw as the smartphone revolution transformed mapping from a planned activity into an instant, always available service that prioritized speed over surgical precision. David DeLorme didn't set out to revolutionize digital mapping when he founded his company in the bicentennial year of 1976. Originally, DeLorme was a traditional mapping company, producing beautiful, hand-drawn topographic maps and atlases that catered to outdoor enthusiasts, hunters, and hikers who needed more detail than standard road maps provided. The company's breakthrough came with the Maine Atlas and Gazetteer in 1976, a comprehensive collection of topographic maps covering the entire state at a scale detailed enough to show individual buildings, trails, and geographic features that other maps ignored completely. This atlas became the gold standard for outdoor navigation in Maine, selling hundreds of thousands of copies and establishing DeLorme's reputation for cartographic excellence. By the 1980s, DeLorme had expanded this concept nationwide, producing detailed atlases for every state that combined the precision of topographic surveys with the practicality of road maps. These books weren't just maps. They were reference works that included GPS coordinates, outdoor recreation information, and geographical data that made them indispensable for anyone venturing beyond major highways. The digital revolution of the 1990s presented DeLorme with an opportunity that perfectly matched David DeLorme's vision of democratizing detailed mapping. In 1991, the company released Street Atlas USA, one of the first consumer mapping software packages that brought professional-grade cartographic data to personal computers. The software came on CD-ROM and contained detailed street-level maps of the entire United States, complete with the ability to zoom from coast-to-coast views down to individual neighborhoods with remarkable detail for its era. Street Atlas USA could calculate driving directions, measure distances, and display topographic information that had previously required expensive professional mapping systems. The software was a revelation for travelers, real estate professionals, emergency services, and anyone who needed accurate geographic information without spending thousands of dollars on specialized equipment. DeLorme's maps were so detailed that the company employed teams of researchers who literally drove every road in America, verifying street names, checking for new construction, and updating their databases with an accuracy that bordered on obsessive. This attention to detail made Street Atlas USA the best-selling mapping software in America throughout the 1990s, with annual updates that customers eagerly anticipated like new video game releases. As GPS technology became available to civilians following the elimination of selective availability in 2000, DeLorme made what seemed like a natural evolution by combining their mapping expertise with GPS hardware. The company's EarthMate GPS receiver, first released in 1998, was a revolutionary device that connected to laptops and worked seamlessly with DeLorme's mapping software to provide real-time positioning and navigation. Unlike the expensive limited GPS units available at the time, EarthMate combined the detailed mapping that DeLorme was famous for with accurate positioning, creating a navigation system that was both comprehensive and affordable. Users could plan routes on their computers using Street Atlas USA, then take their laptops and EarthMate receivers on the road for turn-by-turn navigation that displayed their exact position on DeLorme's detailed maps. The system was particularly popular with truckers, RV enthusiasts, and outdoor adventurers who needed more detailed mapping than basic GPS units provided. DeLorme's GPS solutions could show topographic contours, back roads, trail systems, and points of interest that simply didn't exist in other consumer GPS databases, making them the preferred choice for anyone who ventured off the interstate highway system. The company's commitment to mapping accuracy became almost legendary in the industry, with DeLorme employing what they called ground truth verification, that involved physically visiting and documenting every location in their databases. DeLorme's field researchers drove over 4 million miles annually, checking street signs, verifying addresses, documenting road conditions, and updating their maps with changes that other mapping companies might miss for years. This process was extraordinarily expensive and time-consuming, but it gave DeLorme maps an accuracy that competitors couldn't match, particularly in rural areas where automated data collection was less reliable. The company's databases included over 10 million points of interest, from gas stations and restaurants to hiking trails and boat launches, all verified by human researchers rather than simply pulled from business directories. DeLorme's maps showed details like bridge clearances for truckers, seasonal road closures for outdoor enthusiasts, and even the locations of public restrooms for travelers, information that required actual human investigation to collect and verify. This obsessive attention to detail made DeLorme maps indispensable for professional users like emergency services, utility companies, and delivery services that needed absolute accuracy rather than approximate locations. By 2005, DeLorme had expanded beyond software to manufacture complete GPS navigation devices that challenged industry leaders like Garmin and TomTom. The company's PN series of handheld GPS units combined DeLorme's superior mapping with ruggedized hardware designed for outdoor use, featuring topographic maps, aerial imagery, and the kind of detailed trail information that mainstream GPS devices ignored. DeLorme's GPS units could display USGS topographic maps, satellite imagery, and street maps simultaneously, giving users multiple perspectives on their location and surroundings. The devices were popular with hunters, hikers, geocachers, and outdoor professionals who needed GPS units that could handle wilderness navigation as well as street routing. DeLorme also developed the inReach satellite communicator, a breakthrough device that allowed GPS users to send messages and emergency signals via satellite from locations with no cell phone coverage. The inReach was revolutionary for outdoor safety, providing two-way satellite communication that could summon help from anywhere on Earth, and it became an essential tool for mountaineers, wilderness guides, and anyone venturing into remote areas where cell phones were useless. The smartphone revolution that began with the iPhone in 2007 initially seemed like another opportunity for DeLorme to showcase their mapping expertise, but it quickly became clear that the mobile revolution would fundamentally change how people thought about navigation and maps. Smartphone users didn't want to plan routes in advance, load maps onto devices, or carry separate GPS units. They wanted instant directions that appeared magically on their phones whenever they needed them. Google Maps, launched for mobile devices in 2007, provided exactly this kind of instant gratification, offering adequate mapping accuracy with the convenience of always available data and automatic route recalculation. While Google's maps initially lacked the detail and accuracy that DeLorme was famous for, smartphone users were willing to trade precision for convenience, especially since their phones provided turn-by-turn voice directions that made map reading unnecessary. DeLorme's superior accuracy became less important when users could simply follow voice prompts, and the company's detailed topographic information was irrelevant for the vast majority of smartphone users who just wanted to drive from point A to point B on paved roads. DeLorme's response to the smartphone threat was hampered by the same perfectionism that had made them successful in the CD-ROM era, as the company struggled to adapt their detailed mapping philosophy to the instant gratification expectations of mobile users. The company did develop mobile apps, but they retained the complexity and detail orientation that made DeLorme's software powerful for professional users while making it overwhelming for casual smartphone users who expected simple, intuitive interfaces. DeLorme's apps required users to download large map databases, understand coordinate systems, and navigate complex menus that provided access to extensive geographic information that most mobile users simply didn't want or need. While Google Maps and other smartphone navigation apps focused on simplicity and speed, DeLorme continued to emphasize accuracy and detail, creating mobile products that felt like professional tools rather than consumer conveniences. The company's engineering culture, built around cartographic precision and comprehensive data collection, was fundamentally incompatible with the rapid iteration and good enough philosophy that dominated smartphone app development. The fundamental business model that had sustained DeLorme for decades also became obsolete as smartphone mapping shifted from a product-based industry to a service-based ecosystem dominated by companies that could provide free mapping supported by advertising and data collection. DeLorme had built their business around selling annual software updates, GPS hardware, and detailed atlases to customers who were willing to pay premium prices for superior accuracy and comprehensive coverage. Google, Apple, and other smartphone mapping providers gave away their navigation services for free, using maps as a way to collect user data, serve advertisements, and support other business objectives that had nothing to do with selling mapping products. DeLorme couldn't compete with free, especially when the free alternatives were good enough for most users and integrated seamlessly with devices that people carried everywhere. The company's strength in specialized markets, like outdoor recreation and professional mapping, wasn't large enough to sustain their overhead and research costs when their mainstream consumer business evaporated virtually overnight. Despite attempts to pivot towards specialized markets and enterprise customers, DeLorme's financial situation became increasingly precarious as their core consumer mapping business collapsed under competition from free smartphone alternatives that improved rapidly through massive data collection and algorithmic optimization. The company's in-reach satellite communication devices remained popular in outdoor markets, but this niche product line couldn't generate enough revenue to support DeLorme's extensive mapping operations and research infrastructure. In 2016, after 40 years of setting the standard for mapping accuracy and detail, DeLorme was acquired by Garmin, one of the few GPS companies that had successfully transitioned from standalone devices to smartphone-era navigation solutions. Garmin integrated DeLorme's satellite communication technology into their own product lineup and continued the InReach brand, but the DeLorme name and mapping philosophy disappeared as the company was absorbed into Garmin's ecosystem. The acquisition marked the end of an era when mapping was about comprehensive accuracy rather than convenient adequacy, when users planned their navigation rather than expecting instant directions, and when companies could build sustainable businesses around selling superior geographic information rather than giving away good enough location services to support other business objectives. The story of DeLorme represents more than just another technology company that failed to adapt to disruptive innovation. It illustrates how smartphone ubiquity fundamentally changed the relationship between people and geographic information, transforming navigation from a deliberate activity requiring preparation and tools into an unconscious service that happens automatically in the background of daily life. DeLorme's maps were objectively superior to early smartphone navigation in almost every measurable way, but superiority became irrelevant when adequacy was instantly available and constantly improving through network effects that no traditional mapping company could match. The company's legacy lives on in the outdoor recreation market through Garmin's continued development of InReach devices and in the countless roads, trails, and geographic features that DeLorme researchers documented with obsessive accuracy during their 4 decades of ground truth verification. But perhaps most importantly, DeLorme's rise and fall demonstrates how the smartphone revolution didn't just change individual industries but transformed the fundamental expectations that consumers have about access to information, turning specialized knowledge that once required dedicated tools and expertise into ambient services that users expect to work instantly, everywhere, and for free, regardless of the massive technological and economic infrastructure required to make such magic possible.